This episode of Walt Disney World Today is sponsored by DVCBuyResale.com. DVC by Resale is a great place to buy or sell your Disney Vacation Club points. You can view their current DVC resales, get answers to frequently asked questions, or see the DVC point charts all by going to www.dvcbuyresale.com, or you can call Chantel, the owner, directly at 1-800-844-4099.
This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Friday, June 15th, 2007, and this is episode 270 of Walt Disney World Today. I'm Matt Hodgeberg from MGMstudios.org. On the show today is Mike Scopa of MousePlanet.com. Welcome, Michael.
We have almost 8,000 automobiles in this country, and we can travel by train from New York to California in less than 7 days.
Carousel of Muppets.
Carousel of Muppets.
And also on the show today is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Mike, how are you?
Since Len's not here, I'm going to give a good howdy ho, Matt.
No Van Halen reference today?
Might as well jump.
Might as well. And back for another show, it's the worldwide blogger from All Ears Net, Deb Wills. Welcome back to the show, Deb.
Hola! It's been a long time.
It has. Too long, Deb. And on today's show, we're talking to Deb about the inaugural Mediterranean cruise, which just occurred, and Deb was lucky enough to be on it. I don't know how she gets these jobs. I have to go to, Super Soap Weekend, and Deb gets to go on a cruise. It doesn't seem quite fair. But, when you're Deb, right, Mike? I mean, it's just, that's the territory you cover.
That's right. Somebody's going to do it.
When the Queen of England is busy, they call Deb on. So, Deb, you went on the inaugural cruise. I mean, tell us, first of all, being the first Disney Mediterranean cruise, tell us about how is this different from, say, your traditional Disney World cruise?
Well, if you look at the traditional Caribbean cruises, the 7-night Eastern and Western, and the 3- and 4-night Bahama cruise, those are a whole lot more relaxing than this cruise was. We had been forewarned by folks who had done Mediterranean cruises before that they were extremely port intensive, and they were not kidding. While we had 3 sea days on the 11-night cruise, we really needed them to recoup because a lot of the excursions started early in the morning. About half the time we were gone 10 and 12 hours on our excursions. By the time we got home, you were changing for late dinner seating, and if you were lucky, you got a show in there before dinner and up early the next morning. I actually feel bad for the folks doing the 10-night because they are not getting an official sea day break in the middle of their cruise. All that said, it was an amazing trip, a trip of a lifetime. There were things that I found I liked that I didn't expect it, and vice versa. We spent 3 days in Italy, 1 in Sardinia, 2 in France. Linda and I also got into Barcelona a couple days early, and we did the tourist thing there, and also stayed 1 day after the cruise and played Touristos, and it was quite an adventure.
So what was the real highlight of the trip for you, Deb? You think, of all the places you stopped, all the places you went, all the things you did, what do you think really, if there was one thing you would tell someone about that occurred on this cruise, what would it be?
Well, that's hard. That really is hard. I don't know that there's one thing I could say stands out above the rest. I was really looking forward to Rome. We had some tough choices in terms of not only our excursions there, but everywhere, because as you can imagine, not one excursion covered everything that you wanted to do. So we had to make tough choices. In Rome, I always wanted to see the inside of the Colosseum. I wanted to see the Pantheon. There was a lot of the old historical things that I wanted to do and see for myself. And to do that, we had to sacrifice the Sistine Chapel. There were no tours that did all the things we wanted to do that included that. But we have no regrets about that. We had an awesome time being inside the Colosseum, just touching bricks that have been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That was really a thrill. Another real amazing thing was seeing Michelangelo's David. We were in Florence and had tickets to go see him as part of our excursion tour. I can't even describe to you what an incredible work of art David is. The statue was, I think, 17 feet tall. It's up on a pedestal in its own little atrium with filtered natural light coming in, and the detail down to the muscles on his body and the veins in his arms, everything. It was just, we can just see him in our minds. It was just amazing.
Well, if you really wanted detailed information about the Deb, you could have asked Mike. I mean, Scopa was there when Michelangelo built it. So a little more to the left.
And we had awesome gelato, and we had some awesome Italian lunches that were part of the cruise, and we had some great wines in France. And one of the things I learned on the trip was that France is the number 4 supplier in the world of olive oil, which I never made that connection before.
Really?
And the winery that we went to visit in France at Marseille also produced olive oil. They had 1,000-year-old trees. We brought 2 bottles of olive oil home, and we cannot wait to open them. And 1,000-year-old too.
Yeah, when I read that, I was going to ask you if you could describe that tree. I mean, I can't imagine what a 1,000-year-old tree or a 1,000-year-old vine would look like.
Look in the mirror, Mike. All right, that's the last old joke I'll make on this show.
Oh. Is Mike older than I am?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Ooh.
So, Deb, what was something on the cruise that you really weren't expecting? An unexpected surprise, if you will.
I really was not expecting to love the south of France. My focus for most of the time when I was planning was Italy and Spain. And we really, really enjoyed our time in Marseille. Went to a medieval village. It was just delightful to walk around. The weather was picture perfect every one of our 11 days except our day in Naples when we went to Pompeii. Unfortunately, it was raining most of our time in Pompeii, but the weather
I hope
was
it was
outstanding.
rain this time.
It was rain.
Volcanic soot or something, because that's a bad sign.
That would have been tricky. Anyway, so the south of France was awesome. The medieval village, the winery that we visited with the 1,000-year-old olive trees. In Villafrance, we really lucked out. Disney did this really wild thing when they opened up the excursions for the Mediterranean cruises, and to book online, you had to be up at 3 a.m. I guess they were feeling bad for the folks on the West Coast, so that they only had to be up at midnight. Anyway, the very first excursion we tried to book was the convertible tour of the French Riviera, and that was the first thing we looked for, and it was sold out. And we were very upset, disappointed, but we got over it. And
did you tell them who you were?
They said, "Sorry, you're not in one of the suite categories, staying concierge, so we can't help you." Not really, but those were probably the people who booked. Anyway, a couple days on to the ship, and Linda said, "I'm going to go to the excursion desk and just see if they have a wait list." So she went over and talked to someone over there, and they said, "Well, we can't guarantee anything, but we'll send an email to the vendor and see what we can do." And lo and behold, 4 days later, we had a message on our cabin phone that said, "You now have the convertible tour." So we got to spend 4 hours plus on the French Riviera in a red BMW convertible. I thought Linda was never going to stop grinning. She drove the whole time. She was beside herself. And our friends Rob and Keith also had a convertible, so the 4 of us tooled around, and it was just an amazing, amazing day.
Deb, since this was the inaugural trip, and since it was the first time again for this thing to go forth, I'm guessing that not everything went well, and there were some things that if you had the opportunity, I'm guessing that you would like to see tweaked. And is there anything that you can look at that you would like to see adjusted or changed or tweaked for, let's say, the next go-around?
Well, I think one of the big things is we all have to realize as Americans going overseas that life is different there. Mm-hmm. And even though in some cases we basically speak the same language, the same words mean different things. One of the problems that we had was being the first people, actually not the first in Barcelona, because the transatlantic cruise had disembarked in Barcelona the day we got on the ship. But a lot of the tour guides in the cities we were in were not real good about keeping track of everyone and counting, and that was one of the things we had to keep reminding people. There was confusion a lot of times in terms of what was going to happen. There was actually a lot of confusion when we got off the ship. We were going back to the Disney Reserve Hotel, and no one could figure out where the buses were. That should have been ironed out by then. Nothing major from what I understand on the transatlantic. There were people who almost were left in Gibraltar because the tour guide or whoever it was that was running the excursion wasn't counting people. And some folks almost got left because the last bus didn't show up. This is third hand, but a lot of people were talking about that on the ship. But just a lot of confusion in trying to get the logistics down.
Right.
Disney started assigning cast members to go with each excursion, but for the most part, these folks really weren't sure what to do. We only had one person from the cruise line on an excursion with us who was really together. She made sure she was at the back of the line where the tour guide was in the front. She made sure she had a count of everybody when we stopped at different places. And you really need to do that. There is so much to see. And you start to take a picture and you're looking at this. I mean, it's just a whole different world than what we have here. And so it was easy to get sidetracked and easy to get lost. So it really was helpful to have someone who was counting and knew what was happening.
Deb, I'm interested in the ship itself. Was there anything different, not counting the length of the trip, was there anything different on board than you would normally get on a regular, with the different shows than you'd normally get, or were the menus changed for the trip?
They had several different menus that were different. They did have some new shows. One of the shows is called The Art of Story, and I've heard rumor, but I don't know if it's true or not, that it may be replayed at the end of this year. I had mixed feelings about the show. It had a very strong ending for me. There's a woman singer as part of the entertainment group on the Disney Magic who has the most amazing voice, and she does the Lion King song. She did 3 or 4 in different shows when we were there. And she concluded the Art of the Story show, and that just really was from the Broadway musical, not what's in the show down at Animal Kingdom. Anyway, it really left a good feeling at the end. However, the show itself was kind of disjointed. It was supposed to tell you about how stage shows come to life with song and sets and all the different components. And in the beginning, we felt like we were kind of watching the rejects from Disney World, because the first song was Hunchback, the next one was Tarzan. And while they were done well, there just wasn't cohesiveness to tie it all together. The other problem, and I'm sure this part they're going to fix, is that it was so loud, so incredibly loud, that we all were almost holding our ears by the end. But The Art of Story was a new show. There was a new show just for the Mediterranean cruise called When Mickey Dreams. And if you love the Tapestry of Nation, Tapestry of Dreams music, and if you like Cirque artistic performers, you would have loved this show. We found by and by that people either really loved it or really didn't care for it at all. It was very artistic, very different. I think part of what I loved so much about it, besides the music, was the fact that it was different. It wasn't all Disney movie show songs. They did throw Chim Chim Chimmery in there, which I'm not quite sure how that fit, but the rest of it actually worked really well, and it was just nice to see something different. But from what I and there were acrobats, incredible acrobats, who did the most amazing things. I got some photos of them. And from what I understand, this acrobatic troupe is based out of Marseille, France. And once the Magic Mediterranean cruises are over, the show is going away. But we did speak to the cruise director, Rachel, and she also was very excited about the show and left it kind of open-ended that maybe some other facet of it or format of it will show up in the future. That was really great. And then, of course, Disney Dreams, which has been on the cruise ships for quite some time, recently became plussed and more enchanted, and they've added Timon and Pumbaa. There's actually a walk-around Pumbaa character, which was great fun. And it was very cool, and they did a neat musical skit, and they added some other extras to that show. So all in all, there were some extra shows. There were a couple extra parties. We didn't make them because they turned out to be on the days that we had 10 and 12-hour excursions. And so we were not up until 10 o'clock those evenings to go to the parties.
I can imagine.
So, Deb, in closing, who would you recommend this cruise to? If someone's asking you, hey, Deb, should I take this cruise? What kind of, is there a certain demographic you think that it appeals to?
Well, there were plenty of families on the trip. In fact, one of our group of 14 was a 6-year-old girl who had a blast. And her mother was actually upset a few times because she couldn't get her out of the kids' clubs, which typically happens for the youngsters. But it was a great opportunity to get a taste of Europe. Obviously, we couldn't spend enough time in any one location to really get a feel for that particular city. But it was sort of like looking at a menu and taking a tapas menu, get a little bit here, a little bit there. I think just about anybody who has an interest in old heritage and architecture and the beginnings of civilization would really, really enjoy the trip. But you have to be in good shape because, boy, we went nonstop.
All right. Well, that's it for us today. And, I implore you to really read Deb's blog entries from her cruise to get a great idea of what really occurred on her trip. And that you can find her blog entries by going to www.allears.net. Really, there's pictures. She posted an amazing amount considering everything you did over there, Deb.
Thanks, Matt.
Anytime. Was there any Dole Whip on the ship?
No Dole Whip. I'm sorry. They did have
Scope is off the trip.
Yeah. He told me until we get a Dole Whip machine on the Magic or the Wonder, he's not stepping foot on a cruise ship. So.
Hey, if anybody can get it on there, Deb, you can.
Deb, Mike is like Davy Jones. He needs like a some Dole Whip, just like Davy Jones needs a jar of dirt. To be able to Scopa needs his Dole Whip in order to go anywhere. Well, if you want to find, before we even get to that, forgot to mention our sponsor. Our sponsor, of course, today is dvcbyresale.com, and DVC by Resale is a great place to buy or sell your Disney Vacation Club points. In fact, if you have any DVC needs, you want to buy your DVC property or sell your own, the best place to go is hands down dvcbyresale.com. You can reach it by going to www.dvcbyresale.com, or you can email Chantel, who's the owner and who's appeared on the show a number of times, by emailing her at info@dvcbyresale.com.
And Matt, if I may add a shameless plug for Chantel, long before she was an advertiser on my website, I did buy a resale from her. She's extremely knowledgeable, very helpful, and I highly recommend her.
There you go. Enough said. Go send your money to Chantel right now. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, you can visit the Walt Disney World Today website at www.wdwtoday.com. You can also email us at questions@wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, Mike Newell, and Deb Wills, I'm Matt Hodgebrook. We'll see you on the next show.
218 representatives and 51 senators are needed to pass a new, fair Internet radio music royalty rate. Help convince them. Let them hear your voice on their phone. Call your congressmen and senators. Tell them co-sponsor the Internet Radio Equality Act. Find their names at SaveNetRadio.org.